Horror, one of the biggest industries in the world of modern gaming. Finding its roots all the way back to the early 70s, horror games have become increasingly popular over time. It's a huge and profitable market since apparently a lot of people love to spook themselves with a silly little story from time to time. And what is the internet if not just a wasteland for ideas to manifest, combine, and create anew? From the most old of creepypastas being made into cheap Flash or Unity games, to people combining the world of Fallout and My Little Pony, today I'd like to show you some of the internet's most iconic and mysterious horror games made for My Little Pony. Sometimes the horror of these games can be enough to interest you. However, there are some stories that are not told within the game, but the development of it. Sometimes it's more captivating to listen to the creation and hardships for a piece than to see the final product. In this video, we'll be covering two main things, some of the most iconic horror games from My Little Pony, and as well, delving into some fascinating development stories behind a few of these games, ranging from broken relationships in development teams to an entirely lost game creator. Before anything, of course I gotta do the basic plug. It's not a sponsor, the channel has gotten 0 emails for any of that, so I can't really advertise anything but myself right now. All I have is the FROMMI Discord server. It's mainly populated by artists, all of which are grinding out art fight right now. If you're interested in helping me research videos, attacking other artists, or even just getting to talk to me, this is your best bet to do so. Oh, and as well, I kind of set up this KOFI page. You really don't have to, but like, it'd be pretty cool if you did. That's all I have, so let's get back to the scary and mysterious realm of pony horror. First, I think it appropriate to mention if we covered some of the most iconic horror games to come from My Little Pony. In researching for this video, I wanted to be specific in the games that I added to this list. I was very strict with the fact that I didn't want any cheap jump scare or EXE games, since, well, there's just enough of those already. Most, if not all of them, will use the story of cupcakes and implement a few random jump scares, but not much else. I want to collect games that use atmosphere, story, and gameplay to create eeriness and fear. Cheap EXE jump scares just get boring after the first 3 times, and rarely do those games have a story at all. Great to submit for a quick game jam, sure, but not much to tell a story. I also won't be covering any crossover games like Fallout Equestria or My Little Amnesia, since they're mainly fanfics with barely any fan games if any. Just slightly too niche for this kind of video. With that, I have chosen 3, though technically 4 stories to tell. When you choose to get rid of every cheap horror scare game in a fandom, you extremely limit the games that you can find, I've learned. Due to that, I was only able to find a few. The original concept of this video was meant to be horror games from the past, the present, and the future. However, after all the hell that researching for this video was, you'll come to find that this video format just communicates and works better. Especially when we get to the horror mysteries, that was a doozy for research hell in terms of the original video idea. But of course, before any of that, we still need to cover these old and nostalgic stories. The 3 chosen for this video are Slaughter Horse, both of them, OCTAVIA and the Underworld CELLO, and Story of the Blanks. The one you're most likely to recognize is Story of the Blanks, a significant memory for many fans who grew up with both My Little Pony and grimdark content. However, we're going to be talking about the other 2 first, since I think they have pretty cool stories that shouldn't be overshadowed by it. Also, a basic warning, obviously this game is going to contain spoilers for all the games I mentioned, so beware if you don't want that. Also, most of these games contain pretty vivid descriptions on deaths. None are shown, but it's still important to mention. So with that out of the way, without further ado, let's just get in. Slaughter Horse was originally a mobile game, released around June of 2016, a developer that would go on to release games onto Steam instead. The original mobile game was a simple Mafia-inspired game. If you're unaware of how Mafia games function, this is the basic idea. Mafia game is just a social deduction game where players are usually divided into 2 groups, the Mafia and the Innocents. They can also be referred to as the townspeople. The game will alternate between day and night. During the night, the Mafia secretly chooses a player to eliminate. During the day, all players have to discuss and then vote to eliminate who they think is a suspect, trying to identify and remove Mafia members. The game will keep going on until either the Mafia is entirely eliminated or until the Innocent is entirely eliminated. These These are just the basic rules of a Mafia game, and every group will play it different. There's the original game that uses cards, and then there's multiple iterations that will use werewolves or other mythical beasts to portray the Mafia. The one that you may know best is Werewolf, which has gone on to inspire many other games, such as this one. As well, usually the innocents and townspeople will have multiple roles, such as the nurse being able to protect anybody they want from death, or a gumshoe digging information on someone to find out what their role is in the game. In Slaughterhorse, you play as Hector Silvermane, captain of the Royal Guard. You've been sent to this quaint village after reports of both changelings and a serial killer. In order to raise the stakes, you are informed of a connection that Hector has, his darling Chloe. You find through the bad ending that this is his wife. Slaughterhorse is both inspired after werewolves, the changelings in My Little Pony, and the popular creepypasta of cupcakes. Though the roots are heavily in My Little Pony, there's no direct ties made to it. Instead of Celestia, there is the Sun Princess, and instead of Pinkamena, there is Pinkarella. However, the changelings did get to keep their names, so. There are 9 roles that you can use to your advantage, but 16 in total. There's 3 changelings and a queen. The changelings both kill the innocents and can pose as them, faking evidence and pretending to be others. Pinkarella is your main antagonist, the killer in the town. Pinkarella can kill anybody, including the changelings. The mule is a neutral party, one that can either block off a spell that's made to kill them, or use magic to kill another innocent if they are hung. Because of this, they're most useful to changelings if Pinkarella doesn't kill them. The town drunk is another neutral character that's, well, drunk all the time. Still, the drunk is very amiable, which means the town spirits will be higher when they're alive. Since they wander a lot at night, the town morale won't be affected too much if they're killed by changeling or Pinkarella. But if you publicly hang them, morale will plummet, and low town morale can cause ponies to unalive oneself. The jailer is just meant to put people in jail. The spellcaster can cast a spell, which is an easy way to kill anybody that you believe is suspicious. However, the queen, Pinkarella, and the mule are immune to this. If spellcaster kills an innocent, they will unalive oneself. Reporter is able to investigate information on people, digging out who they are. She is the only one who can fully find Pinkarella and ID her for sure. However, she can also be fooled easily by a forger, sentencing innocents at times. Gumshoe is similar to the reporter, but able to spot out forgers and able to ID the queen. The nurse will be able to protect someone from harm entirely if someone tries to attack them that night. The bodyguard is the same, but stronger. The bodyguard will only save their target from an attack, but also kill the assailant. The watch pony keeps an eye out and sees whoever enters someone's house or leaves it. The party pony will make it so whoever their target is cannot perform their job, all but Pinkarella. If they try to party for Pinkarella, they'll be killed. This is a way to identify her pretty easily though. And then finally, there's the veteran. The vet is an ex-soldier, old and very powerful. When you activate them, they will shoot anybody on sight, innocent or not. So, with these rules, you are meant to both take out and discover who the villains in the village are. You have to play it smart, collect your information delicately, and deduct who is and isn't who. A lot of the game is based on luck and chance. Any wrong move and your run can be ended by all of the attacks just randomly being aimed at the roles you've sent out that night. And if you hang someone incorrectly, not only are you losing lots of morale and subsequently more people, but you're getting closer to the bad ending. In this game, the bad ending occurs when there are no more innocents remaining. When you lose, the village will go up in flames and you will be the last to be killed, either by Pinkarella or the queen. You will die with an empty glass and the photo of Chloe beside you, one that is now covered in your blood. The good ending is obtained through killing both the queen and Pinkarella. Even if changelings are alive, they flee the moment their queen is gone. Whilst getting clips for this video, I was trying to kill as many innocents as fast as possible so I could show the bad ending, and I ended up getting the good ending because my first 2 kills just so happened to be the queen and Pinkarella. Okay. Wait, what the fuck? Which is not what I was going for, but it's still my best run up to now, so. The atmosphere of the game is pretty spooky, there's no jump scares, but it's still unsettling. It's more so meant to be enjoyed as a Mafia game after all. However, there are still some faults to it. Some of the textures glitched on me whilst I was playing, which I quickly realized can reveal who the changeling queen is. And as well, playing the game too slow will cause it to crash, especially around the end of a run. We need to get people. What the fuck? Wait, 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 what Are you fucking kidding? Small things like that don't ruin a game, but it can still be really frustrating. The most upsetting thing about this game, however, is its current state. Slaughter, the mobile game, is no longer on the App Store. I was only able to play it through an emulator and an old APK posted to Google a few years ago. And even now, it still seems to be the only way to play it. It's unfortunate, but it makes sense why it had to go down. It's true that Slaughter wasn't the most horror-filled game, rather just a grimdark parody with some loud sounds. However, it wouldn't be the end for its horror record, as its predecessor had still yet to show itself. Slaughter 2 isn't exactly a sequel or even a prequel, rather it's an expansion of the greater story. As well, it's a 3D game with much more mechanics, utilizing tarot cards, luck, sanity, bloodlust, baking, and so much more. If you're wondering why crazed mechanics like this exist, it's because the plot of Slaughter is different than the first. It's still a mafia game, but this time, you're the mafia. In the second game, you're playing as Cuddletini, who is also Pinkarella. In this sense, rather than Pinkie Pie and Pinkamena, this game refers to the two as Cuddletini and Pinkarella. In this game, you're the confectionaire, basically just the bakery pony. The roles I mentioned earlier still exist, with a few outliers or name changes, but more importantly, there are a lot of additions. A ton of roles have been added to this game, and God knows I can't edit a video with this many, so I won't delve into all of them. Basically, the most important additions to this game are the mayor, the noble, the preacher, the disciple, and 3 new investigators. Those investigators are the deputy, the detective, and the sheriff, who all exist to protect the others and to investigate you. The noble is basically their Twilight Sparkle. They're a royal figure and are studying before they become an alicorn halfway through a run. Then, they will help to investigate. The mayor is meant to keep peace in the town and to keep everyone under control. But if they're alive, you can't win. The preacher is looking for the changeling spy, that there is now only one of, and also investigates you. The disciple is a devoted servant to you, giving you information on the others and encouraging you to kill. However, the disciple is also hinted to be somewhat of like a yandere, I wanna say. They even have a shrine dedicated to you. Because of their obsession with you, they will turn against you if you don't kill them by the end of the game. Slaughter 2 is meant mainly to build on the lore and story, bringing much more information to the player. This includes the disciple, this creepy and overly dedicated person that wants you to not only harm others, but them as well. And then there's also the mayor. In some runs, they are oddly promiscuous. Like, in some runs, when you enter the mayor's home late at night, they'll try to seduce you, which obviously doesn't work. That's kind of insane. I didn't know I had murderers. Wait! That was the mayor? Wait, the mayor was trying to... In this game, you can also collect cutie marks for a cape, just like in the original Cupcake's Grimdark. If a pony is executed by the town, you need to recover it through Snapper. If you don't, you cannot finish the cape. There's lots of lore and story to be added, but mainly it's another luck-based game. I lost this game so many times due to deputies and sheriffs being out whilst I was at the max bloodlust, which would result in the town killing me because it just happened to be the one night that the mayor couldn't stop a lynch mob. There's so much info tracking and strategy for this game required, and it can all be ruined by one bad night with the alicorn or detective. It's incredibly frustrating, but surely the ending is worth it, right? Okay. We've slaughtered almost all the town. Is that actually it? Oh my... Yeah, so, small thing I forgot to add, it's still a beta game. It's not fully finished yet, and there's a lot of work that still needs to be done. The praise and scold mechanic for Gummy, Snapper, it just doesn't seem to work in my opinion. Maybe, again, because it's still in beta. As well, the green arrow option at the bottom right of the screen can either cause actions to be cancelled, or straight up crash your game if you're going too fast. And by too fast, I mean like 3-second pauses before going on to the next section. It's a beta game, of course it's gonna have its faults, but again, they're still frustrating and can be worth mentioning. Still though, this game does have a lot of amazing features that make it much more fun and even scarier than the first game. First of all, there's the transitions. At least when you're first starting the game, the transitions are extremely loud, so naturally, at least for me, they were pretty scary. However, what's most disturbing for me is the writing. Each death for each character role is written pretty vividly, such as this one here. If you have gambling issues like me, this game is great. With its awful chances in RNG. It's pretty fun to do no skill runs, just hoping you kill all the right people without knowing their location and statuses. There's a bunch of new things I run into every single run, such as blackmail, poison, noble ascension, friendships, death notes, and more. There's a ton of things to discover, and no run is ever the same. I hope that with the full release of this game, we'll be able to fully understand what the nightmare from the beginning is, as well as other consequences and lore for these characters. But again, with this only being beta, we'll only be able to wait and see. Both Slaughter Horses are pretty unique games, more for thrill and strategy than spooks. Still, the atmosphere can be pretty scary, especially if you're playing with volume too high. Can I make this bigger? Press any button. That's so fucking loud! Moving on from Slaughter Horse, another pretty notable game from the past is I won't nearly delve into this one with as much detail as I did Slaughter Horse, but I'll still recap some of it. Octavia in the Underworld Cello is a small Mac adventure game developed by Hero of Time 1000. It was originally posted to DeviantArt. The game was planned to release the Halloween of 2013, but only the demo was released on the Halloween of 2014. To this day, this is the latest development that it's had. The plot of its game is different, but much more developed as I can tell. Octavia and Vinyl are headed to a haunted mansion party, using directions that were crudely written on a napkin by someone a little bit less incompetent. Because of this, they end up at the wrong mansion, one that is actually haunted. Vinyl, the party pony she is, believes that it's meant to be scary with its ominous green glow, and she rushes in. She falls into a trap set in the home, causing you, Octavia, to panic. You are now responsible for finding clues and solving puzzles in order to get her out. If you try to launch yourself into the trap that Vinyl fell in, you'll hit your head on a sharp rock and die. Once you learn your lesson and avoid the hole, you can actually start to play most of the game. This game doesn't allow you to save for a long time, so it's going to be a lot of trial and error. Next, you find a head with a key in its mouth. Octavia recognizes this as the head of one of her friends. When you go to get it, the head leaps at her hoof and transforms her into a zombie. When you reload and explore more, you'll find a massive vent in the kitchen. Through this vent, you are able to communicate with Vinyl. Why Vinyl survived and Octavia dies from the same trap is beyond me, but to each their own. Vinyl states that there are 4 others with her, all fooled from the same trap and now stuck on the ground. From this point, you can speak to Vinyl for clues. She will help you with puzzles if you're stuck, such as the key in the pony's head. She mentions probing the key out with your hooves directly. To do this, you need tongs. To get the tongs, you need oil. To get oil, you need not only to acquire the oil can, but need to open the chest beneath it. To open the chest beneath it, you need to acquire the key that is next to the timber wolf. Oh yeah, there's a fucking timber wolf in this. In order to get rid of the timber wolf, you need to scare it off. Vinyl will explain how to do it, reciting that old ritual Granny Smith does to scare them off with pans. You have to scare it with the pan, and then you have to get a spoon to scare it off with the spoon and the pan. Something about scaring it consistently, banging it loudly enough to scare the Timberwolf away. Then, you can get the goddamn stupid key. And all of this is to get the tongs, to get the key for the first puzzle of the game. This entire game is puzzles, and you learn each step by dying over and over. And keep in mind, up until this point, you don't have a save. The deaths themselves aren't huge jump scares, but they're sudden and grotesque enough to make you either panic or angry. Wait, oh my god, okay, okay, no, okay, fucking cut off. The key you obtained from the head's mouth leads to a safe haven for Octavia. Best thing from this place is that you can finally save your game. You can also relax here and with enough big brain power create a fire potion. You throw this at the timber wolf from before, but not the room that it's in because it will set the whole place ablaze. You have to do it in the kitchen where there's water sprinklers, obviously. Once you kill it, you can now go upstairs. You find a preteen foal there, and when you rush to comfort him, you realize that this is another zombie. God pray that you saved before because now you have to run from this thing to the safe haven. If you don't, or you die, back to the very start. That's pretty much the entire game, since again, this is another beta slash demo sort of deal. Well, I mean, I only covered 25% of the contents in the game, but I can't really bring myself to play it anymore. I don't think you really realize how bad I am at both horror and puzzle games. I know I make a lot of horror content, but I cannot stand scary games. It was terrible getting through what I could for this one at all. Let's hear. No. As for puzzles, I'm just really stupid. You have to realize I had to stop playing Hollow Knight after the first 15 minutes because I got stuck on a puzzle. And the reason that's so devastating, I realized recently, is because Hollow Knight isn't even a puzzle game. I just have severe reading comprehension issues. My media literacy is pretty good, but my actual literacy is dog shit. When I had to cast this spell to make a fire potion, I sat there for 10 minutes reading this little paragraph over and over because riddles are so annoyingly hard for me. Because of that, I just can't get through any more of this game. I found most of the story by watching Paradomic's playthrough though. He honestly found out a lot about the game super fast and easy. I have no clue how he had half the issues I did, but it's really fascinating what I found through his gameplay. It's when you finally kill the Timberwolf from earlier that you start to finally get any of the story in this game. You'll be transported to Vinyl's point of view, where she is with the other 4 that are trapped. You'll then see the master of the undead, the main antagonist of this entire story. Her motives are unknown, but she shows no fear to Vinyl's threats or determination. As well, she is in full control of the undead, talking down to them and demanding that they do her bidding. After some more gameplay, you'll find this ghost with a silly little hat. He invites you to play cards with him and gamble in exchange for scrolls, those of which will let you progress in the game in whatever puzzles lay ahead. However, he can also provide you information on the master of the undead. According to this ghost, she's looking to eliminate all of Ponyville. It's all tied back to her son, which is that young boy we saw earlier. He reveals that she has the power to raise the dead through a cello, one now deemed the Underworld's cello. If you know anything about OCTAVIA, you'll know her main instrument and talent is of course the cello. The master of the undead can both raise ghosts and zombies, and their souls will only be freed once she is killed. It's here where OCTAVIA realizes that she no longer has to save only Vinyl, but her entire hometown. This is as far as I personally got story-wise, but there's some more from Paradomic's playthrough. It seems that later on, you will be able to revive the fool back into what he was before his death, rather than a zombie. As well, you'll be able to play the cello. From other clips I found on his channel, there seems to be either an extension or a whole separate demo where you can play from OCTAVIA's point of view, doing her own puzzles and unlocking her and other prisoners' stories. There's lots to find. Death stories and building resentment, as well as more gambling with the ghost and eventually befriending the original zombie fool. However, it's all stuff that I neither got to nor will. It took me 5 hours to get as far as I did, and puzzle games just aren't for me. However, the spooks that I had were actually really fun. Again, I don't play horror, but this itself was a breath of fresh air. Horror games exist for a reason, getting scared and laughing it off after. And since this game could do that with more than just a PNG of Pinkie Pie's face, I thought it worthy to mention for this video. Though the last update was nearly 10 years ago, there's still development being done. In response to a comment, Hero of Time confirmed that they are still working on the ending while working at their corporate job. Balancing 2 jobs like that can't be easy, so props to them for still dedicating work and passion into this game. Okay, I know a lot of you bigger fans have been waiting, and to be honest, so have I. So, let me now get to finally cover Story of the Blinks is a small 8-bit pixel game, developed by Donitz for a small game jam. The theme for the game jam was a creepypasta game contest. It was released in July of 2011 to Newgrounds and exploded in popularity almost instantly. So much so that it not only won the game jam, but had an entire creepypasta made out of it. The game itself is around 15 to 20 minutes, if even that, so having it turn into a 1 or 2 hour so grimdark was big at the time. The game is pretty simple. It's a genuine replica of an NES game, both with the pixel aesthetic and techniques to create the music. You play as Apple Bloom, wandering into the ever-free forest before meeting up with Twilight. After pleading with her, she allows you to join her in visiting Sakura. Sakura mentions something bad about to happen to the forest, but Twilight doesn't inquire on it. When you're off to leave the forest, her and Apple Bloom are trapped by huge trunks. The trunks take a while for Twilight to move. Apple Bloom wanders off while she's still waiting and spots a small gray filly running into an underbush. Out of curiosity, Apple Bloom follows. The underbush is dark and quiet, eerie and mysterious. You run a while in it, and eventually find a glowing and safe haven. It's a small village tucked into the ever-free forest, containing of a few adults. You can interact with these ponies, getting to learn about their relationships and customs. The main thing you discover, though, is their flanks. As is commonly known, My Little Pony characters receive a cutie mark when they discover their special talent. This will nearly always happen when they are a filly, so an adult with a blank flank is extremely rare. The closest the canon show has gotten to showing this is the 2-part beginner of Season 5, where a small village is run. However, these are all equal sign cutie marks, depicting sameness and equality rather than no talent at all. As well, these ponies have had their talent stripped from them rather than never received. In Story of the Blinks, none of the adults have a cutie mark. When you inquire about it, they will act dumbfounded as if they'd never heard of a cutie mark. You continue to explore, continuing to see the gray filly running further and further into the village. You're led to an abandoned home, one with little furniture and one fire. When you close in to investigate the fire, you find charred remains of a carcass lay in a fire pit. They're small, undoubtedly those of a child. Apple Bloom panics and rushes to leave the village and finds that it's no longer the same. The sunshine and bright grass are gone, back to that dark and eerie underbush from before. The adults become these beastly creatures that are rooted to the ground, and they all know what you found. They claim that the filly was cursed, and for their safety, they had to kill the child. They plead with you to stay, but if they catch you, your game is over. You have to evade them and hide behind items to get out of the underbush, eventually finding the filly from before. Her coat is gray, her mane light blonde, and her eyes glowing gold. She is a ghost. Essentially, when this young filly, known as Ruby, obtained her cutie mark, the town believed her to be cursed and murdered her. Her cutie mark is a magnifying glass, accentuating her ability to find things. With her talent, she helps Apple Bloom find an exit. Apple Bloom escapes with Twilight finding her, which ends the story of the Blinks. If you've seen any of my content before, you'll know that one of my favorite scare tactics is complete silence. Unfamiliarity and the unknown are huge fears for a lot of the population, and this is because humans are basically programmed to fear what they do not know. A loud noise blaring at a jump scare won't work on me as much as pure silence, since one is expected whilst the other is nothing. The scene where the carcass of the child is found was not made silent by me. That was in the game. I added fan art and the fire sound, sure, but the original silence made my heart plummet when I replayed it for the first time. This game is one of the most renowned and iconic for the My Little Pony fandom. Rightfully so. It's eerie, misleading, and of course, terrifying. People still question if this game is what led to the 2-part starter of Season 5 with how similar their plots are, and to this day we don't really know. However, whatever impact it made on the canon universe of My Little Pony is little compared to what it was for fans. Again, people love this game. Most comments on the gameplay for Story of the Blinks are filled with pleasant memories and nostalgia for the game, and that's an impact that's always warm to see. Compared to Slaughter 2 and Octavia in the Underworld Cello, it's much shorter. but it's also complete. Its simplicity not only helps it be scarier, but it also
helps it be a complete game.
To each their own. Some people develop games faster and some don't, but it's still remarkable to see how fast Donut was able to create such a well-recognized game. Since this is mostly about nostalgic games, you may be wondering why another certain pixel game wasn't mentioned. I personally find the development story for that game to be more fascinating, and a perfect segue for Games with interesting development stories aren't uncommon. Often, a company will have poor conditions, causing employees to speak out about their situations. Things like this can both bring down a game's reputation, but also bring eyes onto the product. Due to this, I found 3 games with interesting origins, but not in their actual gameplay. More so, their creation. As I mentioned earlier, there is a widely known horror game that brings many people nostalgia. Yet its creator remains an enigmatic figure we know very little of. That game would of course be In the April of 2011, a small pixel game was released onto Equestria Daily. The game, a basic platformer featuring a pixelated Luna, turned then into a basic screamer horror game. This PNG of
Pinkie Pie
with a wide grin played out as a screamer before the game closed. Those who played would have their desktop overridden with creepy images and files that contained the message, "The end is nay." It's very clever, I know. Due to this, many people believed that it was a virus, so the game was quickly taken down from Equestria Daily. Not only a ban for the game, but for all EXE games on their platform. The creator of this game went on to release 5 more installments to the game, all pretty similar in the original game except for the last one, which is the only one to contain an actual story ending. It's a pretty cheap EXE jump scare game, but what a lot of people don't know is that this game came out before EXE games were actually a thing. Sonic EXE is always pointed to as the shitty start of it all, and it's not wrong, but Luna game was released before Sonic EXE. In an odd sense, it's somewhat of a pioneer to the genre. For nearly a decade after the publication of these games, one question was very prominent. Who made Luna game? It was a widespread search for this lost creator, digging through old YouTube links and asking around on Reddit, but never did it amount to anything. People wondered often, who was this person? Were they actually trying to make a virus, or were they trying to make a cheap scary game for fun? Their anonymity only made people more curious, and even more certain that it was the former. It was only in August of 2021 that the most credible source for the creator was revealed, making this post on Reddit. The history of Luna game from the original creator. Hello, I am the creator of the creepypasta game series known as Luna Game. I made the games over a decade ago now, and I wanted to write up a bunch of things about my process and thoughts on the series as a whole. If you want to read what I've written up, I made a website for it here. I'm sure a few people have tried to come forward over the years as the creator of the series, but I wanted to share some things from my perspective. In the end, whether or not you believe me is entirely up to you. I won't be trying to prove myself to anyone. Also, if you have any questions for me, I'll do my best to answer them here. Whilst many were suspicious, the link on the post showed many lines of code for the games, as well as Easter eggs that nobody had ever found, all of which still exist for the games. As of now, this is the most provable and most likely original creator to link for all of these games. Izzy's made a video about it around the time that this post came out, and subsequently interviewed the creator. A lot of the info I gathered for this segment I actually had to rely a ton on that video for, so I really appreciate someone collecting all of this data. You should totally watch her video. It goes into way more depth, and it's a pretty fun watch. Overall, it's a basic mystery that's been solved now. We know the ending of it all, and it seems to be over. Whilst I did rip on the game for being pretty cheap with its jump scares, I can't pretend this sort of content didn't make me shit bricks as a kid, you know? Which, of course, that's the majority of people playing at the time. Of course, these basic JPEGs are going to scare people, and of course it became an urban legend in the gaming world. For the time, it's honestly not that bad. From what's known, this game is an inspiration for Story of the Blinks, which is a huge deed in itself. It may not be Resident Evil, but it's still worth mentioning in this video. That's a game I can talk about its history with ease, especially since the search is finally over. But now, I need to get something huge and heavy off of my chest. As I mentioned earlier, I was originally going to cover games from the past and the present. When I was researching, I looked up something along the lines of My Little Pony Horror Games 2020, since that's recent enough in my opinion, and instantly, a game showed up at the top of the search bar. A game I didn't expect to take an entire night to research just to come up with the most infuriating tale of research that I have to date. The game to show up on Google was simply titled... You know what, no, I'm not even gonna bother with the pleasantries, like, you know why? Because this one is actually one of the worst experiences I've ever had when developing a video. I cannot express to you the anger I feel when I waste time. And this wasn't even a waste of time. This was a waste of my life. I could have found something else to make content on, but instead, I was trapped looking at the PNG for this game for hours. And the worst part, I still can't even really tell you if this is or isn't a good game. So, okay, put yourself in my shoes. You're trying to find a horror game for this fandom that was made recently. You find Price of Fear linking directly to a Wikipedia page. I'm reading through this because I want to understand what I'm about to put myself through, and I have to say, I have never seen this level of hype for something I've never heard of. These descriptions were hyping these games up to hell and back. Which reminds me, it's a series of games, and you know what, that really excited me, since now I had a ton to cover. The description for the first game was talking about how greatly the fandom received this game, which again, really excited me. Apparently this game was so beloved, it had won 5 awards, with the biggest one being for Player's Choice, which was insane in my mind. Player's Choice is no joke. You realize the Game Awards partially based the win of the year off of those votes? This was insane in my mind, and I'd never heard of it before. I go to download this game and it's posted on the Equestria Daily site. I'm instantly sold because I've yet to be strayed from the Equestria Daily, so you know, what's the harm? It takes me to the Cybertronics site, which is the developers of not only the main game I'd play, but the rest of the series. For some reason, the installer for the game is 2 GB, which is odd itself, but then it was the buggiest and most flash player launcher that I've ever seen. As well, I could only even get to this launcher after turning off all of my antivirus software. Suspicious, I know, but again, Equestria Daily. After Luna Game, no way they'd let anything suspicious onto their platform, right? I look at the comments again and I find this. Apparently, this game doesn't use an engine like Unity or anything, rather an amalgamation that uses a hacked Warcraft 3 engine. And I know this is true because all of my captures for this game are labeled, and of course, they're labeled under Warcraft 3. I don't know any game creation ethics, but just from that, it seemed a bit sketchy to me. Still, all the comments seemed to iterate that the game was okay, and hey, this was a development company with a ton of other games. Why would they go all this way just to give me a virus? I continued this complex journey just to play the first game. It's no big deal, it's an indie game, but I'd at least expect the game to run when I press play, you know? I had to find so many workarounds since I kept getting error after error. Every solution led to another crash, and more so, another failure. And I know that it's not my computer's fault because an entire part of the launcher is a screen with multiple steps that you have to take in order to work around each issue. So each crash and each fail I get, I go back to this little tutorial sidebar to fix it, back and forth, until finally, the game launched. I made it. The game launched. You gotta understand, with an installer of 2 GB and all of these workarounds, I already had spent nearly an hour just to get the game booted up. And finally, I did. I was so happy just to find this. This is what y'all had win 5 awards? I looked it up at this point because I was just so confused as to everything. Why did I need to allow it so many admin privileges and exclude it from my antivirus just for this? I saw a comment on the original daily post that it was for WASD control, and guess what on my keyboard didn't even work? Hello? Oh my. Why was this game apparently so community loved and considered one of the best in the horror space for My Little Pony games? But then when I go on YouTube I could only find 2 videos of gameplay. One of those only found through a link on, guess where? The Equestria Daily Forum! And while we're on that, why could I only find information about these games through the Equestria Daily and these wiki pages? As well, why do these pages show basic grammatical errors whilst boasting about the greatness of these games? It's just all so iffy and causes so many questions, and what's worse, I'm still asking them. I have no idea what I experienced, what I downloaded, or what I played. All I have is this bit of gameplay, and from what I've seen, all these glitches are pertaining to the fact that I didn't run the right programs, download the right software, do the right workarounds, just basic things like that. The camera broke when I touched the scroll wheel, and I only found out after that they explicitly ask you not to do that since they know that it breaks the game. And for a game with 5 medals, why am I the one to blame for it not running properly? What is this game? I was so mad. I spent another hour trying to play just to have nothing working. Any click of the wrong button crashed the entire game, which led to me doing all the workarounds again, just for it to crash again. Eventually, I just watched the video someone else posted of the game, and
they got their own. Oh no. Oh no. What is happening?
I don't fucking know.
Oh, what's this? They're also having every issue and struggle that I did. They eventually get it to work, and finally we see a bit of gameplay that's actually real, and
but if I run into it too
when I tell you that this person's scream made me jolt more than the actual monster or whatever the thing on the ground was. I'm losing my mind at this point. The first 2/3 of this guy's video are just him trying to find out how to run the game at all. I go back to the wiki to find out who wrote it, because who would write these things about such an odd game? And then I realized what those awards were actually for. Maybe it's my fault for conducting this research at 4 in the morning, but I finally realized, it dawned on me, that these awards were not for the Game Awards or even Equestria Gaming. These awards were for an event held by Cybertronic Games. And may I remind you who made these games. They made their own event and paraded these 5 medals for their own game onto other sources, just to make it seem better. And you can say it's the Player's Choice Award, but why don't we list that on the official site that they're specifically from an event held by you and not simply the Player's Choice? It's a bit misleading, no? Am I just stupid? And before you say anything, I'm asking rhetorically, yeah, I am stupid. I investigated this when I was tired, and I didn't read far enough to know why they got these awards. I didn't read properly to understand what the game was and what errors to avoid before I broke it over and over. But that doesn't change the fact that this game is just so odd. It's too much for me to care past this point. I'm leaving this behind like a former lover that I just have to leave behind, because what the fuck? Besides, it's just too much for me to investigate in this one video. I could probably make a video in the future investigating it if I'm curious again, but it's just too much for this video. It's a curious case, and these screenshots did make me really curious to play, but with all these bugs and workarounds and lack of footage online, I'm more suspicious if anything. For this video, I'll only showcase the footage I barely gathered and that of others. The least I can do is explain what the game is meant to be. Price of Fear Origins, which is the game I've spoken all the way up to now about, is a remake of the original Price of Fear. It's a remake of one of their earlier games. Of course, it was developed by Cybertronic Games, released on November 1st of 2020. That's why it showed up when I looked up Horror My Little Pony in 2020. Here is the description of the game. I actually rewrote their description because there's a few grammatical issues which made it hard to read, but it is pretty much the same thing, just changed a little bit. In the year 2257, cybernetic and biotic technologies are at their peak. The police received a distress signal from one of the branches of United Corp, L-Train Tech. When a police squad was sent to investigate, communication with them was entirely lost. After losing contact with the special squad, the police chief asked for help from the Tactical Anti-Paranormal Service, also known as TAS. An alpha team from TAS, led by Captain Shelly Velasquez, arrived to find out why the communication was lost. Shelly started Plan Omicron, which meant the team would enter all train tech from different sides and meet in the center hall. After they entered, the AI defense system locked all the main doors. Worse, Shelly lost contact with the rest of her team. Soon, she would discover that the nightmare of the past had returned. So, this is supposed to be a puzzle game, where you have a few mechanics to attack anything that attacks you. The model you play with seems pretty good, but the game is just odd. It was made in 2020, yet it feels like an old Flash game from the 2010s. There's nothing to introduce you, not even a mini tutorial or hints as to what to do. It just assumes that you've read all about the gameplay on another source and have come to play it already prepared. It's frustrating, but if you have everything known, it seems to be a pretty okay game. The original video I showed earlier seems pretty good conceptually. There's some scares and mechanics that seem interesting. As well, I found one more video with footage from one of the other Price of Fear games. From what I can tell, it also looks pretty decent. There's some fun and creative mechanics here and there as well. What I can absolutely give it credit for is its horror atmosphere. I hate the dark, and this, followed by eerie echoes from nothing to close to no sound, made it really uneasy when it finally did launch for me. However, the lack of function made it more frustrating and hard to play rather than uncomfortable and scary. I think that if Cybertronic maybe used another engine or put some more time into its basics, like a small tutorial, and implemented workarounds for the player's satisfaction rather than side quests like install this outdated DirectX 11 package, it would be much more enjoyable. For now, I can understand why there's only 3 or 4 videos about it. I mean, who would go through all of this trouble just to post a video with this kind of footage? That's a mystery and hole that I fell into. Maybe not a mystery by most standards, but something I thought would be interesting to cover still. Let's get back on track and talk about the final game that I had in mind. An actual internet mystery for the development of a game. What's most interesting about this one compared to the other two is that this game still doesn't exist. This game is known as I know I stated I wouldn't cover stuff like Fallout Equestria and My Little Amnesia, but this isn't like that. This game was actually being developed by the author of the fanfiction for Silent Ponyville. Real fast, here's the basis of Silent Ponyville. Silent Hill. That's pretty much it, just ponies in Silent Hill. I'm kidding, there's way more to it, obviously. This is the description for the fanfiction. Pinkie Pie is being tormented by horrific nightmares. Unable to deal with it by herself anymore, she seeks out Twilight's help. But will it have been the best decision when she finds herself alone in an abandoned, fog-filled Ponyville? This story is pretty interesting in its telling, as it's one of those multi-ending kind of stories. In that regard, this would have been amazing to adapt into a video game. You have the multiple routes, the story options, and all of that. And it seems that the author of the story, Sam Rose, thought the same. Videos began to come out from the Sam Rose channel, depicting screen caps and the general build of the game. The community was extremely excited, anticipating this game, but that was the last development when seen for this game at all. This video, released in September of 2011, is the last we would ever see of the game. In the research that I did for the games above, I saw people mention Silent Ponyville and comment on the fact that its likelihood to be made is close to none. People haven't heard any more developments on it, and haven't seen the creator comment on it again. That was until 2014. A Tumblr replied to what I believe is a thread about a game that disappeared in the darkness. I say I think it's a thread, both because I don't understand Tumblr, and also the original link to that is gone now, so, you know. In this reply, Sam Rose delves into all the information on what happened to Silent Ponyville. Kind of unrelated, Shunks made a video extremely similar to this video nearly a year back, so I asked Shunks if he wanted to be a part of this video. For this portion, I thought it'd be fun if he read out this Tumblr post. The post reads as follows.
Alright, fine. You wanna know what happened with the Silent Ponyville game? Cause it's not a pretty story. I may not agree with you about a lot of things, but you do seem to be under a lot of misconceptions about the game. Once upon a time, I was writing Silent Ponyville. Before it had even been finished, somebody asked me if they could make a game for it with me as the director, basically. I agreed and he started working. He made awesome progress, using Blender to make 3D models, and make a very basic game engine within Blender to have a functioning game. He pretty much did all the work. I at most had say of what should or shouldn't be in because I wrote the work. Half the time, he didn't even bother listening to me and just did what he wanted. In order to make his work easier and to get the game along faster, I found a guy who was working in Blender to make fan models and make a fan model for Silent Ponyville, and I asked him to be part of the project. So I had him make some models and send them to the guy making the project. The guy making the project, while agreeing to help, seemed to dislike the idea of getting help and just continued to do things on his own. He changed quite a few of the puzzles I had created in the story to fit his own ideas of what good puzzles should be, and I asked him to change them. He either didn't or got indignant about it. There was one particularly bad puzzle where it was a sliding picture puzzle of a magical girl poster. What was worse was that the controls to it were in a part of the room you couldn't see the puzzle in, so solving it meant guessing, and it was incredibly annoying. In the end, I stopped hanging out with the guy who was making models, and he stopped working on the game cold turkey because life was too busy to relay any sort of messages with me. He never even gave me any way to contact him outside of emails. With me unable to make a game, and the other guy making models having a falling out with me, there was literally no way I could continue on the project at all, due to having literally no experience at making games. A prototype of the work in progress is on my hard drive on the computer repair, but it needs a lot of work and someone who knows Blender to fix it. At no point did we have a full development team, nor did it ever go as smoothly as you'd like to think it did. Silent Ponyville game was a dream that seemed possible but fell apart because the person making it decided to stop making it. It's that simple. I wish the game had been finished, but at this point, might as well stay dead. And future projects would hopefully be better, but if recent events are anything to go off of, it'll be a while before that's the reality.
So, that's really it, to be honest. The two people making the game had creative differences, and eventually, the game was no more. It's sad, but it's how a lot of these stories end. Two creators can't agree and eventually give up entirely on the creation. Especially when it's for a small project like this, where there isn't really a bigger team that can stand up to the plate if one creator is dropped. Without the other party, these two creator games more often than not just sink. The prototype for this game looked very promising and ominous, but it's all we have of it. Though this mystery was solved like a decade ago now, I know there were so many out there wondering whatever happened to this random screen capture of a game when they were younger. So I hope this provided closure. And I hope to say that for every game that I featured here. I hope that my cover of it was able to bring you some sort of solace. For these sort of spooky games, that's all I really have. Again, I'm not the biggest horror game fan, and that's okay, right? I can still appreciate these games and enjoy them, which I do. At the end of the day, they're still very fun to play. Unironically, I've been playing Slaughterhorse 2 just for fun now, since my little gambling addict brain really likes clicking at random and failing over and over. As for the future of
MLP-inspired games,
I want to put you guys onto Project Freedom. If you guys have seen my other videos, you know I absolutely adore My Little Pony infection stories, and this game is specifically being made for an infection story, which is insanely exciting. I hope to cover this game in the future when it's completed, as the story so far seems exciting. Plus, I've spoken to some of the developers of it, and it's got some development stories like the ones I've brought up in this video. If that's something you're interested in, let me know, cause I'd love to cover it. I have not much else to say for this video, so yep, bye!
Take off your idols, take off the runway, take off the Cairo, take off the sandal, pay 5 days stay, take a put a meal and the follow. Take off the fuck flag, take off perception, take off the cop with the iPad, take off the unload, take off the unsure, take off decisions I had.